Yeah, I'll take your guys' questions. I hadn't had a chance to chat with you guys since I don't know since when it was, but I know last week uh, there was the on-field situation with San Diego where Tatis hit the grand slam and you know uh, Jabot and Woody ended up getting suspended and I guess I just want to address one thing from my perspective on Chris Woodward in particular, because I actually thought what he said afterwards really should have been celebrated in some ways, and I know that's a little bit hyperbole, but I think Woody was saying. My take on what Woody was saying after the fact was that he kind of grew up in a little bit of an older school organization at the time in Toronto, and some of the quote unquote unwritten rules, which quite frankly I'm not sure that everybody understands them the exact same way, what those may be. But what he said was that he may not have necessarily agreed with something that happened on the field, but that he's open to understanding that things have changed, that he's open to a conversation about it, that he didn't necessarily think he was the keeper of the rules, or that he was the one to dictate what was right and what was wrong. And that just struck me personally as the type of humility and adjustability and thinking that should be celebrated, quite frankly. And one of the best moves I made here in the shutdown quarantine was deleting Twitter off my phone. I have to admit I've reinstalled it a couple times and then deleted it subsequently a couple times afterwards. But fortunately on this one I didn't. But a couple of people sent some of the responses. And everybody obviously entitled to their opinion. But the one people were like, I thought some people were, kind of killing Woody when, if you listen to the words and what he said and what his intentions were, again, I like that's exactly what I would like. I think leaders should do in situations where, they should be open to others' opinions and ideas. So, Woody's as thoughtful and mindful and genuine a person and a leader as you're going to find in the game and really anywhere. And I was proud, to work with him. I always am, but certainly at that moment, I thought he handled it really well. Quite frankly, I didn't love the appearance of what happened on the field. I personally did not have any issue with the guy's swing, but that's kind of irrelevant at this point. But I think we all know, a lot of people will, kind of throw stones from glass houses, and there was a lot of that going on social media, and I just didn't think it was appropriate. So, again, I just wanted to kind of say that because I hadn't had a chance to talk to you guys, and again, I thought what he said was a big positive and not the negative that it was portrayed to be in some areas. All right, I'll get off my soapbox after criticizing other people for being on theirs. And
we'll take questions. Please raise your hand. The questions for JD. Let's go with Chaos.
John, what happened last week with the 8-game losing streak changed your on where you need to focus not so much on this year, but on improving the club beyond this season?
Yeah, it definitely factors in. I mean, we haven't played well, period. I mean, really, we've had stretches where we've done some things well. I mean, our pitching up until the last week or so had been generally pretty good, especially our starting pitching. But we haven't really put together a complete stretch of quality, clean baseball and beyond a few games. And I mean, stating the obvious that that you're not going to win that way. So I think this week highlighted some of those things, but it wasn't necessarily the first time we'd seen them. It was just kind of we saw it for an extended stretch. I think we're better than we played here this last week, but as the conversations we've had going into next Monday's deadline are probably more reflective of being very open conversations and seeing what makes sense for us longer term. And that's really where we're at right now, is in the conversation stage.
Do you have to consider trading some of your bigger players to contenders for future help at this point?
Consider, but I don't think we're locked into any one thing. We're having a variety of different internal conversations, and we'll see where that leads.
Evan.
I think John called on me, but I wasn't completely sure. Okay. So given all that, John, where would you say this organization kind of is at this moment in time? And I'm not just talking about this season, but over the longer haul and over the broader picture.
Yeah, I think we got kind of two things going on. One, there's a clear focus, with the staff and the front office on playing cleaner and better baseball for the remainder of the season. We're capable of more, and there's a lot of individual development and focus that needs to go on, both from younger players and veterans as well. We're going to play better, I believe, over the course of the season than we have here recently. And then secondly is, you're always trying to develop your young talent across the organization and acquire when you can. To the degree that there are those opportunities that make sense for us, we'll go down that path. It's been, there's been a lot of good things going on that just don't get the light shined on them because we're not playing minor league baseball, and that's across the industry. But whether it's at the alternate site or some of the guys we have rehabbing in Arizona or across the country, and a few in the Dominican, like a lot of good things that are going on that are kind of below the radar at this point. But we need to continue to emphasize that.
And what's your perspective on if you were to trade any of the bigger names? I'm not going to use any examples, but if you were to trade any of the guys that are veterans with some control, what's your perspective on how you evaluate what you would be getting back? Because most of those guys aren't in the majors, and some of them may not be playing at all.
Yeah, it's a challenge. There's one of several challenges here, but there is video and a data sharing system at the alternate sites. Not every team has participated in it. We have, and then there's the opportunity to use our contacts to find out information as well. But it's much different and not nearly. You don't have nearly as much confidence in the information as you would have, say, at any point in the past.
The last thing for me is, I don't know if you said so in as many words. I know I've probably judged it this way, but we've talked about the long-term contracts that you have with your middle infielders, and that they were signed as younger guys to kind of be part of the anchor here. It doesn't look like they've made progress this year. How does that impact this team going forward? Where do you guys stand on your middle infield?
I mean, bottom line is we need to play better top to bottom. And you guys referencing are, literally and figuratively in the middle of that, right? In the middle of the diamond, and signed to be key players on the team. And again, it's not limited to them, but we need to get more out of this group.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Chris?
With you looking at more of a longer term picture at this point, and calling Leote, what kind of a role would you want to see him in for the rest of the season? Just obviously no minor leagues, he hasn't been able to play, so I would think that he would be in the picture for 2021 in the outfield. So what do you envision his role for the remainder of the year?
Because he's been able to get some live at bats with the alternate site group, but not traditional game. We played a handful of sim games and things like that, so he has seen some live pitching. But yeah, I think we're looking a couple things. One, I think him playing up here is going to improve our defense. Potentially in a couple spots. So I think that's an area that one of several areas that we need to address. So I think there's some short-term benefit. Two, his at-bat quality has improved over the last couple of years. He's capable of developing more power, but that I still think is on the come. But yeah, we're going to use this opportunity. I think again it helps the club in the short term, but also use this opportunity to get him some needed development time, and also provide us with some more information to make decisions this winter. We'll see how much this opportunity will ultimately affect our decision on center field next year, but it can only help in providing us some more information.
Emily.
All right, does that work? Drop the phone. So, JD, I'm talking to Woody and the players. They're not afraid to admit their level of frustration is pretty high right now. For you and your staff, where is that at, and how do you we keep talking to them about how to get out of this spiral? Do you feel to an extent helpless at this point in time because kind of the roster is what it is, or how do you handle that from a front office perspective?
Yeah, it's been similar watching it. It's one thing when you lose close games or you just get beat, but we've beat ourselves in a lot of ways, and it hasn't been clean baseball, and it's been tough to watch. I feel for our fans, watching this over the last week. That being said, it is a week of baseball, and the week prior to that was a much different story, and I know this group is capable of turning it around. To what degree remains to be seen, but I think there has to be kind of a just kind of short-term, day-to-day incremental improvement type mindset. And I know that met with some of the guys here, some of the staff a little bit earlier, and just talked about those things. What are some of the kind of small victories that we can get here today to improve our chances to win tonight and give ourselves better at bats and play better and build on that going forward. So that's got to be listen, this has been a rough week from a on-field competitive standpoint, obviously, but we've been through times like this before, and you'll come out of it. It's got to be those kind of small incremental improvements day to day to ultimately lead to those W's.
Is that lack of clean baseball, is that kind of, I don't want to say fault or blame, but is that equally distributed to players and staff, or how do you, not that you're looking to divvy up the blame, but I would assume that can't be just put on one group.
Yeah, I would expand that to really start with myself and in the front office. Ultimately we're everyone down here has been hand selected by our group, and so to the degree that there is a you're looking for where that starts, it's clearly with me, and so I don't I'm not at all looking at the staff or anything like that. Or there won't be. I could tell you there will not be any changes in that area. I generally don't believe in that to begin with, but I feel really good about this group, and we've just got to keep working at it and turn this thing around.
Thanks, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, please. Levi.
John, looking back over the last 3 or 4 years, it feels like a lot of the bigger names, as far as like young guys coming up through the system. Outside of Gallo, Mazzara's gone. Odor has been inconsistent. Ronald Guzman's in the alt site. Has that been? I guess 2 questions. One, would you chalk that up to more of an assessment problem or a development problem there, or am I way off base on that?
No, I think it's a little bit of chicken or the egg. Meaning, I think that it's a little bit of column A and column B. I think there are. Well, let me say this. I think our farm system today is in a better spot than I think is kind of publicly considered. Obviously, I'm I'm over it, so there's some selfish reasons to suggest that. But I think even when you look at like the public rankings from different, I think whether it's Fangraphs or MLB.com, we're kind of all over the board and where they have us, and I think a full minor league season would have given the opportunity to guys rehabbing like Mason Englert to come back and perform, or young players that recently acquired that people hadn't seen yet, like Maximo Acosta or Steele Walker, come in and perform, and I think things would be looked at a lot differently. The group that we'd put together and kind of the range you're talking about signed anywhere from like 9 to 13, 10 to 15, somewhere in there. Some of them, like Leody Taveras, are just getting here and scratching the surface, and it's early to say. Some of them, even the guys that you referenced that haven't been as consistent, whether it's Ronald or Rugi or Nomar, are still in their mid 20s, and you see a lot of guys bloom at later periods of time. But ultimately, like we don't have the big league homegrown core here now that you need to win a championship, and I think we've changed how we operate a little bit on the acquisition side and on the development side over the last probably 2.5, 3 years. I mean, there's been some meaningful changes in how we do business, but it takes longer than that for you to really see the results.
Right. Well, and that was my second question. Was, I guess, probably a bigger question than we've got time for in one sitting, was just about some of the changes that have been made in the last couple of years. You guys have included a lot more technology, a lot more of couch under analytics. Have there been any other, as far as like philosophical changes from top down?
There have been. I don't want to necessarily go into all of them, but I think the coaching staff at the minor league level is probably as strong as we've ever had, and just the way that group kind of works with each other, meaning there's really, I think we've done a really good job of breaking down some of the walls or silos that have typically existed between player development, R&D, the performance side on strength and conditioning and nutrition and et cetera. So I believe in that group, and that, but it's you kind of referenced some of the investments we made. I don't think we've made a bigger one than on some of the people we brought in and developed and promoted in the system.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Okay, let's go to Dave Raymond.
Thanks. JD, there's been some talk today about the defense and where that needs to improve. I'm not going to make excuses for anybody, but it's pretty clear that the infield plays a lot differently here at home than it has on the road. We've watched, the teams on the road, we've watched Dennis Klein out there. Looks like he's trying to make some adjustments. I don't know what exactly he's doing with all that equipment, but are there adjustments that you guys are trying to make in the way that infield will play, or even do those things exist?
I think what you're seeing with DK is just him applying some moisture to the field. I think there's it's a bit of a learning process, right, as far as how much moisture to apply to the infill. You'll see sometimes when a ball, especially in the outfield, when it hits down, you'll see that kind of little bit of a splash of that material, and you don't want it to become too dry, because then when that splash comes up, it doesn't necessarily replace exactly where it was displaced from, right? It kind of gets spread out, and so you don't want it to be uneven. That being said, I don't really think it plays all that differently from a normal field. and I don't think that is at all the reason, why our defense hasn't played as well as it can. So that for me is like more or less a non-factor.
Jeff?
On Odor, say he's been inconsistent. I mean, if you look at the record, he's been really consistent. He hasn't been a very good player for you guys, or as good as the contract would suggest you thought he would be. So where do you stand on him? Last September, it was at the point where he was going to have to show results if he wanted to continue to play regularly, and here he is again in another slump. So just what are your views on Odor?
Yeah, so I think I think it's really important to separate the player from the contract. The contract is an organizational decision. Ultimately, my decision. The performance is what Rugi's working on with the coaching staff. And I think the contract at this point is not really relevant to whether he's playing. I think it's more the idea that quite frankly, there isn't an alternative that's really ready that we feel is more likely to produce than to use this opportunity to try to get Rugi performing at a higher level. From a straight talent standpoint and what he's capable of, he gives us the best option, and that speaks to probably that I need to do a better job of creating more competition, creating more options for the staff to work with. But I would rather I think there's value in him getting days off. He's obviously not performing at a level where he needs to be in there every single day, but at the same time, like, he can't get better if he's not playing either. And he provides us with a more talented option than the alternatives at this point.
Solak would not be. I mean, that's his natural position. We have a lot of outfielders now at Tavares. Is Nick Solak no longer a second baseman, I guess?
He's capable of going over there. Yeah, he is. And that may be a consideration down the line. But Nick's in the lineup as well. So it's not it's not Nick versus Rugi. As for that, I mean, for those at bats, they're both playing.
Hey, other questions? Go to PR, then Evan.
John, in the last 3 years, you've made trades involving Darvish, Hamels, those 3 or 4 relievers. My question is, if those trades are available to you now, given among the players you have, if those trades are available, would that be better to pull those kinds of trades rather than get the 7th or 8th seed in an expanded playoff?
I think kind of depends on what the the specific deals. I mean, as you've seen with the market here the last couple of years, when you're talking about a rental player, I don't even love that term, but a player on an expiring contract, the market is relatively small. These are not like franchise altering returns usually. You look across at the the whole industry wide worth of trades. So it would have to be it would have to just make sense for us. We wouldn't. I don't think we would just look to move guys for inventory. But if there are other reasons to do so, we would consider it.
I mean, is there really value in pursuing the 7th and 8th spot and not looking towards next year?
I don't know that those are like mutually exclusive, TR. I don't. I mean, but you're asking, is there value in making the playoffs? Yes, I believe there's value in making the playoffs.
But at the expense of turning down a trade that could help you in the future. So
that's where it. I think that's the where you have to make that decision, right? And I think it's largely based on what teams are willing to part with. Some clubs we've talked to seem more motivated than others, but we'll see where we go.
Time for a couple more. What else? John Radigan, Evan, and Levi. That will do.
JD, so speaking of that trade deadline, and you said you talked to some of the clubs, given that there's no minor league season this year, how do you anticipate the trade deadline being, relative to a normal year? Do you think it'll be a pretty active flurry at the deadline, or will it be minimized somewhat since there's uncertainty?
I thought if you would have asked me that question, John, 2-3 weeks ago, I would have thought it would have been a little quieter than I think it's going to be now. And I think the biggest piece of that is, it really speaks to the confidence level across the industry that, we're successfully playing out this season, and we're going to be able to, the confidence level that we're going to be able to crown a champion at the end of the postseason. And really, that's I really want to tip my cap to the players and to everybody working on it, the medical staffs, the logistics teams, everybody. It's not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but these guys have done a really good job of making that sacrifice here for going on a month or really 2 months now, counting the spring training deal. So because of that, I think it's going to be a little more active. Now you've got other factors. You mentioned the minor leagues, but I think a bigger one is just going to be the lack of revenue, the dramatic decline in revenue across the industry. And I think every club and every ownership group is going to view that differently, and how, whether clubs are willing to take on, money, how much they're willing to take on. And then, there's a little bit of a, most clubs have had to make some tough decisions with staff, right? Whether it's salary decreases or furloughs or et cetera. And, how do you weigh that against, adding money at the deadline? So I think that'll be a big one. At one point I thought that I wasn't sure how teams would value winning this season. Is there an asterisk involved? I personally, I don't really think there is. I think, when these games start, everything else, all the kind of weirdness goes away. And yeah, you still have guys wearing masks in the dugout, and it looks kind of, unusual, but the competition level is the same, in my opinion, same as it always has been. And so I think all those things kind of contribute that, I think there will be motivation for teams to improve. The financial side, I don't have full understanding of yet as far as how teams are going to operate in that area, but I think that there's a confidence that we're going to play. I think there's a desire for clubs to compete and to win, and because of those factors, I think there'll be a decent amount of activity.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you have your financial marching orders?
I'm in regular conversations with, discussions with Ray, and communication was the word I was looking for. Regular communication with Ray, and I don't think that finances are going to dictate the moves. I think it's going to be baseball driven and what makes sense for the franchise.
Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, Evan, and then Levi, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hey, so in 2017, when you guys traded Darvish, I think the narrative or the term that we used was something of a rebuild. And I know you don't really care for that term in general, but then with the inactivity in 18 during the offseason, and then the trades again in the middle of 18, I think we saw kind of a retooling effort. Is there, if you have to trade these veteran guys, does that say anything about this attempt at rebuilding? Does that issue a verdict on this particular go-round?
We traded rental players for the most. We traded guys that were on expiring contracts. I don't really view it that way, Evan. I think the decision when we traded Darvish was that we didn't feel we were any more likely to sign him if we had kept him the rest of that season. We were on the fringes of the wild card race, and we felt with the 3 players we got back that was a better return than getting the 75th pick in the country, which is about what you would have gotten if you'd offered the qualifying offer. So that was basically the decision, the factors that we didn't think it was materially changing our chances to make the playoffs and we thought that we would have more kind of go forward talent than we would have if we had held on to him. So, I mean, it wasn't so much of a rebuild than really just kind of individual decision.
And so where you guys are how would you term where you guys are in terms of the arc towards competitiveness, if that's a fair question?
Yeah, I would. It is what it is. We don't have the year of minor league development to point to and to say that, hey, we've taken real steps with these specific players. And so we were having this conversation the other day. Like I genuinely believe that we would have that group of players would be looked at a lot differently and would therefore would change the perception of kind of the timeline. But that's not the case, and we're not the only club dealing with that.
Okay, I'm sorry. That sounds like I belabored that point. Thank you.
You're good.
Levi?
Yeah, sorry, I got booted for a second, but I'm back. I was just curious about the decision to keep 3 catchers with Trios coming back and kind of what all factored into that. I know Trevino's been hitting really well lately. But what else, as far as keeping Mathis around?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think Robbie, just coming back, he's good to go, but probably from a workload standpoint, not going to push it too hard here early on. I think both Robbie and even Jose could see some potential time at DH. I think Robbie could potentially get some at bats at first base, potentially at some point. It's not necessarily right away. And I think Jeff is kind of exactly what what he's always been, which is a leader among the guys, really good in the clubhouse and really good with the pitching staff, and with the way that injuries have gone and wanting to maintain depth and flexibility there. We thought for at least a short period of time we'll carry the 3 guys and then see where it goes.